Welcome back to the Grappling Bulletin podcast. Myself, Corey Stockton, here as always with Connor Joshin.
What's up, guys?
Connor, some great UFC this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Jon Jones, man.
Scary heavyweight right there. I didn't expect him to come looking out like that, but
Not after 3 years away.
yeah. And it was very obvious. Like, his frame was different. It really did look like watching a new fighter, and Cyril just didn't really have anything for him.
Which is just unbelievable. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the jiu-jitsu enthusiast in my heart loves to watch a striker get just put on his heels and out in the first round.
Yeah.
But even still, like, kind of reminiscent of the Shogun Hua fight from back in the day, but still, it's like totally different Jon Jones.
Yeah, well, I still, speaking of Jon Jones Jiu-Jitsu, one of my favorite moments of all time is watching him put Lyoto Machida in a guillotine and walking off as his limp body slumps down. So, everyone should love Jon Jones being back in the UFC, but it wasn't just UFC. You know, we had a few other things going, but Bo Nickel also, not just Jon Jones.
Yeah.
Bo Nickel made his debut, right?
Yeah, man, how good did he look?
He looked great. Round one submission. Can't really ask for anything more than that. Shows that he's working on that jiu-jitsu. But, you know, you can't say getting a round one submission from Bo, I don't think necessarily has to be a testament to his jiu-jitsu, because a wrestler like that is just going to break you until you put yourself in a position where you're going to give up your neck or whatever else it can. So shout out Bo. You know, I actually knew his dad from back in Kentucky. He's a great guy. You know, his dad coached local wrestling around there. So it's fun to see it, man.
Yeah, a great showing for jiu-jitsu this weekend. The co-main event as well. I can't remember what her name was. The new flyweight champion who defeated Valentina Shevchenko was getting kind of handled for the first 4.5 rounds, and then out of nowhere, just a clutch submission.
Alexa Grasso.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now the champion.
Man, gotta love that. And it wasn't just MMA. We also had some jiu-jitsu. We had the IBJJF Grand Prix. We had a few other events on Flow. So if you're a combat sports fan, this may have been your weekend to, you know, I don't know if you'll ignore your girlfriend and go in your own room and just put on all the fights, or maybe she joined in with you. But hopefully you were able to catch some of just the awesome stuff coming out of the sport.
Because, you know, we were talking about how dominant Jon Jones was, and how, like, there are very few as dominant as him, but one jiu-jitsu athlete who's making a name is and let's get into the kind of the show and some of the agenda today, but Tainan Dalpra.
Oh yeah, potatoes of today, Tainan Dalpra.
Is there any athlete in jiu-jitsu, in gi jiu-jitsu, more dominant than Tainan Dalpra right now? The man, in less than 3 complete years, is 55-0 in the IBJJF competition.
Yeah, Tainan looked absolutely phenomenal in his super fight. We've been talking about his super fight coming up with Izaki Bahiennes for weeks now, almost a month at this point. And, you know, Izaki was kind of the person we were picking as, you know, if there's anyone left on the roster to really put an obstacle in front of Tainan, to slow down that momentum that Corey's talking about, we figured, hey, Izaki's good as anyone to be that guy. But Tainan had other plans.
Yeah, and, you know, both of these athletes expressed that they were looking to come out and win by kind of quick submission. We've seen that from both of these athletes. They have the kind of tenacity and just ability to blast through somebody's guard and submit them. But Tainan really turned the volume down on Izaki, kind of took all the wind out of his sails with that beautiful passing that we generally see from Tainan, but it wasn't the same style of passing that we see from Tainan. It was a little bit more close. Tainan is such a good mid-range passer, right? He floats from side to side and just kind of balances and looks for his opening. Tainan, once he got to the top position, just forced his way through Izaki's guard. And when he got past Izaki's guard, he did not move. He stayed put right where he was. He was attacking, but he was not letting Izaki funnel him back.
Yeah, which is super fun to see. We always see Tainan put on a lot of great pressure. There was a highlight that we had put up of him from one of his past performances against Andy Murasaki that I kind of fanboyed over. But it was a lot of kind of that similar thing of just putting down side control pressure, putting down that top pressure, and getting rid of any option Izaki had of providing any offense, it seemed like, to the match, or even just getting off his back and out of that side control position.
Yeah, and, you know, I think Tainan himself and Guy were a little bit not critical, but a little self-reflective of the performance.
As they should be.
In saying that, I wanted a submission, but hey, we got to go back and work on some things now, which, Tainan, for what it's worth, put up 19 points on Izaki, and it seemed like Izaki at a point, at least my impression was that he was just trying to survive, right?
Yeah.
He was not looking to get scored on anymore. He was not looking to get submitted. He was just trying to do what he could to stay shelled up, not give up that submission, and kind of give that reward to Tainan. And in doing so, Izaki showed some great defense, right? He was keeping his elbows tight. He was not giving Tainan this inside leg position that he so desperately wanted, because when Tainan gets there, he's looking for back control. That's his avenue to setting it up. And to an extent, up until the last 2 minutes or so of the match, Izaki kept his shoulders glued to the mat.
Oh, yeah.
But with that, Tainan was just able to pour the pressure on, and he looked phenomenally heavy. We see Tainan as, at least I see Tainan as, a great movement passer. Does a really good job of just disorienting his opponent by moving left to right, and then getting to the back. But watching him just drown Izaki in pressure was a new testament to how good Tainan's control game is.
Absolutely, and it wasn't like we didn't see him on bottom at all, because he did pull right off the bat, and he here in those sweep points to come up on top. So he really did earn his spot there to be putting that pressure down and take that top position. But I do think there's a fair question to be raised. You had brought up, it seemed like Izaki maybe was a bit more on the defensive through most of it, or at least towards the end, especially when it looked like those points just kept running up, and it didn't really look like he had a great out, aside from just not getting submitted. But even then, Tainan, at about 2.5 minutes left in the match, he's at 13 points, right? He's done nothing but pass, get into side control and full mount, and kind of cycle between these positions. And then he was given his third penalty for stalling, which, if you were watching the match and you had the same kind of, impression of it as maybe myself and you did, of it looks like Tainan's always on the offensive. Izaki doesn't necessarily have a great avenue towards scoring. It was hard for me as a fan to watch and see, understand exactly where maybe those stalling calls were coming from, because, put it in context, Tainan was what? One stalling call away from being DQ'd? Yeah,
in the final 2 minutes, he was, and you could hear, at least I could hear sitting next to Guy Mendez, Guy calling for Tainan, just go back into his guard and pass it again. Just go back into his guard and pass again. Just keep moving, because they were aware that stalling call would have ruined the match for
it's a real threat.
Not just them, but for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? And, these new rules that the IBJJF has introduced, I had the pleasure of attending the rules meeting and having them kind of clarified, because this is the first time these rules have ever been put into effect. But what I garnered from the rules meeting were two things, right? As we've mentioned, the stalling call time, the shot clock, let's call it, was reduced from 20 seconds to 10 seconds, which is a huge change. But in addition to that, the head referee made it clear that the change of, I guess, the reduction of the rule for double penalties, right, where both guys are now not moving, both guys get a penalty, basically nobody gets a penalty. The way they redefined that rule to make it a little bit more aggressive and directed, which I think we should appreciate, is the athlete that gets penalized is the one whose job it is to be offensive, right? So the defensive athlete won't be penalized. It's the person who is in a dominant position, who should be pursuing attack, must be pursuing attack. Now, there's an outlet to criticize that rule, right, and say, well, Tainan, who's in an offensive position, shouldn't have the responsibility to move, and you can make that argument. But with the rule being the way it was written, I think that they did a great job of enforcing it, and it forced Tainan to funnel back out. Give Izaki a chance to work, or at least say, okay, this isn't working, I have to do something else. Maybe it's not a perfect rule, but the interpretation of the rule was, I think, perfect.
Absolutely. And to Corey's point, obviously this is something new for everyone. It's not just new in the rule books, but it's new for these referees, right? These referees are trying to apply a great many rules, right, all at once, and trying to change something up and then seeing how they're going to apply it in real time, live, you can only ask so much as far as like fixing a match, quote unquote, from just one or two rule changes. That's never going to happen. But, I was really excited to see that they are implementing some rule changes, even if I wasn't necessarily super excited about how it played out in that one particular match. It's always good to direct the sport towards a more action-oriented approach. But I think, to your point, you had said, the onus of responsibility is on the guy in the trying to achieve a dominant position, on the aggressor, maybe not the defender. I do think, like you had said, like the criticism has to be at some point, if you pass to a point where there is no longer very clear ways to dominate further besides taking the back or submitting the guy, then it feels like the onus of responsibility has to change to the bottom guy a little bit there.
And in this particular instance, this is probably where I'm, let's say, standing up for the rule, right? Tainan was clearly looking for back control. He was weaving his right leg underneath Izaki's left arm on repeat for 30 minutes.
Yep.
But every time Izaki defends that, he's leaving access to the mount. So Tainan had another option.
Yep.
He decided not to pursue it.
That's fair.
But if there is an ability to progress to somewhere else, and your opponent's shutting down the other direction of progression, you are not progressing, which is what the rule is. So, I don't know. We're getting into the weeds a little bit here, but I think, maybe these things need some time to be further figured out. Yeah. But I think it's for sure a step in the right direction.
We need to throw those rules out in about 30 more matches before we figure out how to really iron them in. But, yeah, absolutely. Super excited to see.
And I don't want to get lost in the weeds too much without discussing what I think is the real takeaway for me from that, which is Tainan Dalpra is dominant in the middleweight division.
More so than we thought beforehand, man.
And so I'm kind of stuck wondering, especially after Tainan's post-match interview, what is left for Tainan Dalpra?
Yeah, you got to look at some of the names in that division and kind of have a lot of question marks because Izaki really was the big, can he do it?
And even Izaki came down from medium heavy. If you remember at Worlds 2022, he competed at medium heavyweight. He won the medium heavy Grand Prix. So while he can make middleweight, he's no longer his primary weight category. Yeah. And if you look at the registration of hands, and even at Euros, right, so many athletes that we would consider middleweights have suddenly become lightweights or suddenly become medium heavyweights. And
they vacated.
Not accusing anybody of fleeing a division.
It's coincidental, for sure.
Right, but Tainan is kind of parting the seas in the middleweight division and saying, okay, you're a middleweight. Does that mean you're a heavy lightweight, or does that mean you're a light, medium heavyweight?
Yeah.
People just seem to be dispersing. Yeah. There are some athletes that are staying resilient at middleweight. Ronaldo Jr., and several others. Ronaldo jumps out to me because he constantly is throwing himself in the middleweight division, despite the fact that we've seen him compete well at medium heavy. I was impressed by Espen Mathisen, who's generally a lightweight, who jumped up at Euros to compete at middleweight. And he was explicitly chasing Tainan in that move. It didn't work out the way we hoped. Espen got DQ'd, but he wants that match. Tainan wants that match. I'm sure we'll get to see that one eventually. But besides those two guys who were chasing Tainan, who else is there?
Man, I think the one person you got to put on his radar, and it's probably on the radar for every athlete in jiu-jitsu, is Mika Galvao. Mika Galvao is he the only loss that Tainan has at black belt? He is one of them at least. He lost to Mika Galvao. Tainan did in 2021 at EUG Promotions in a gi match. It was a referee's decision. I went back and I watched it today. Tainan had a very similar strategy, it looked like. He pulled guard off the rip and then was kind of looking for a sweep and then maybe to apply that kind of top pressure. But the sweep didn't come till much later in the match, probably too long for Tainan to really set his top game up and establish any meaningful passes, or anything to put himself on the scoreboard, and ended up losing that to Mika. However, I know it was a little bit of I don't know if controversial is the right way to put it, but there's still some question marks around Mika's victory there, which kind of does put his name in the hat for next up, who can take on Tainan. We have someone there.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to clarify, I said at the beginning of the show, Tainan undefeated at 55-0. That's in IBJJF competition specifically. To be more complete regarding the rest of Tainan's black belt career, he is 58-1. One loss is Mika Galvao.
Man.
Right. Mika Galvao at the time, by the way, in 2021 was a brown belt.
Yeah.
I full disclosure, did not watch that match today, but I do remember that match being kind of just an explosion of movement, which is something we generally don't see from Tainan matches or really from Mika matches. Mika has explosive tendencies, but he does not kind of like just Tasmanian devil himself at people the way other athletes might, right?
Yeah.
And the same can be said for Tainan. Tainan has an explosive, let's say, throw by. He has an explosive sweep from X guard, but the majority of his movements are kind of smooth and precise, and he explodes when his opponents don't expect it. But these two guys just can't. From what I remember, it was just bombshells, just one after the other. So that's a match for sure I'd like to see again. I don't know if it plays out exactly like that, but two of the best athletes in the gi currently, those two guys need to face each other, especially because Mika's last IBJJF Worlds campaign was at lightweight.
Yep.
Tainan has made it pretty clear that he does not want to move from middleweight until he's beaten Marcelo Garcia's middleweight title record, which I believe is 5. So
we got him here for a little bit longer.
Tainan wants to spend 4 more world seasons at middleweight before he starts moving on, looking at potentially no-gi, looking at potentially absolute divisions. Now, that may sound like a long time, but he's 22 years old. So by 27, he might have accomplished his first goal of being the most decorated middleweight ever and pursuing other things. That being said, we have time. Mika, 18 years old, 19 years old still, will probably be up at middleweight before you know it. So it's a match that I'm sure we're going to see, but I would love to see sooner rather than later.
And Mika has been calling for gi matches. He wanted it under the Who's Number One rule set, but under a gi match on Instagram, which is really interesting, something that we haven't run in a long time. But regardless, I think whether it's Who's Number One rule set or IBJJF rule set, if you're looking for a matchup that's going to produce action and excitement for Tainan as well as being competitive, because Tainan can do action and excitement all you want. Put him out there with just some guy at an open, he's going to score 50 points, take their back, and then submit them with a highlight reel. But you want someone that can have that sort of match of dynamic and fun to watch while giving a challenge. I don't know who else is on the list besides Tainan. You got some of those middleweights that you talked about, Ronaldo Jr., Espen Mathiasen coming up, but I feel like Tainan's show against Izaki is a real definitive way of showing that he's very far above even the people that we consider next in line for him.
Sure, and I want to move on from this, but I do want to loft up just 2 other names that I mentioned in the Grappling Bulletin article this morning, because always interesting to throw in. I think you can drop these 2 names in any hat, and it makes it a more interesting conversation. Ty Ruotolo, Kate Ruotolo.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's the thing that always stands out to me about them is they so rarely compete in the gi. But when they do, they just flex on everybody. You know, Ty Ruotolo came in to Worlds in 2022 after having not competed in the gi for 6 months, when he won Brown Belt Worlds and just stunted on people that really compete in the gi far more often than he has in the last probably 5 years.
Yeah. Everyone talks about often like gi versus no gi and how gi can sometimes slow it down, whatever. But the Ruotolos are some of the few athletes in the world where the gi does not slow them down even a little bit. They still have their wild shooting for crazy submissions that maybe shouldn't. They're doing that no matter what stage, whether it's gi or no gi. So you're right. That would be a fun one. I hadn't even thought about that one.
Yeah, we'll stay tuned to see what happens there. That's something I would love to see at Worlds. Maybe this year. I don't know. I hear maybe the Ruotolos are looking to enter, but we got plenty of time to figure out what's happening here.
We're dropping rumors here, folks. Yeah. We're starting rumors. We're getting it spun up.
Anyway, let's move on to the results, more results from the actual Grand Prix at the Tezos FloGrappling IBJJF Grand Prix. The Tainan versus Izaki match, of course, was the main event super fight, but there were 2 4-athlete Grand Prix that both took place. 2 athletes walked away with $10,000. Let's kick it off first with the men's lightweight Grand Prix. Jonathan Alves defeated Andy Murasaki in the final. He defeated Elijah Dorsey in the semifinal. He looked great. I was really impressed in the way he showed some different elements of his offense than we're used to seeing. Jonathan, generally such a heavy passer, but he was really a lot more open, especially in the Elijah match.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong. Elijah Dorsey was the last second replacement, or was he originally in the Grand Prix?
No, Elijah was the late replacement, like a week beforehand.
Well, shout out Elijah for showing up and doing that thing, going out there against the best in the world. Love to see it. But Jonathan, like you said, he looked really impressive. He was able to come up for the 2 sweep. He won by quite a bit, actually. I think our replay may not be the best descriptor of how the match ended up going. I think we had some difficulties with the scorecard, but that ended up with like a 15-point lead before finally ending the match still on top. Isn't that right, Corey?
Yeah, and Elijah did have a great first half of this match. He offered a lot of offense, hung in there with Jonathan, and as much as that should be kind of a feather in Elijah's cap, it does speak to just how weathering, I guess you can call it, Jonathan's game is, because he stood there in Elijah's closed guard for several minutes, just kind of sitting postured and ready and defending off all of Elijah's kind of best offerings. And then once Elijah started to get a little bit more desperate, Jonathan poured the pressure on, went straight into his passing game, which was a mixture of heavy chest pressure and very smooth leg movements. Watching this is kind of the best of both worlds, right? You kind of have that loose passing that Tainan plays and that heavier chest-to-chest connection passing that Jonathan plays. And you can I talked about this last week, but some athletes are tangibly heavy visually, right?
Yeah.
You can see how heavy they are. Jonathan for sure is one of them.
Yeah, and full disclosure, we had plenty of critiques about Jonathan's previous matches on the IBJJF Grand Prix. Not that he hasn't always performed really well, but maybe not having as dynamic as matches as some people would have hoped. But, this match against Elijah Dorsey was a perfect example of the kind of jiu-jitsu that he can play whenever he decides to turn it on. Just pressure heavy. There was never a time where you thought the match was going to get stalled out into a place where neither person can score or positionally progress. So we love to see that. What'd you think of his finals matchup?
So that match did at points devolve into 50-50, which
no lapel.
Yeah, no lapel play getting involved in there, but this is kind of what happens when you have two athletes who know each other as well as Jonathan and Andy Murasaki do. I want to talk more about that in the next section, but just to start, right? These two athletes are very familiar with what makes each other dangerous. So you go to maybe, let's call it a safe space in 50-50. I do want to say, even though this match ended up in 50-50, it did not look as slow or as, let's call it, boring as 50-50 can sometimes look. They were attacking. They were looking for sweeps, and not just those seesaw sweeps. They were looking for actually getting out of exiting this position into a favorable position. And when it did slow down, or when athletes very obviously stopped progressing, the referees called it. And that's all we can hope for, right? These rules aren't going to, change things overnight, but as long as the referees enforce them correctly, it's great. They will start to change the way that the sport is played.
Yeah, absolutely. So shout out Jonathan. Love to see him out there getting in on the GP, and congratulations on the GP win. That's another 10K in your pocket you can go ahead and walk home with. But I know not just the 10K, but he also took the mic afterwards. He had some comments about maybe some of his previous matches. One with Roosevelt Souza sticking out is kind of piquing his interest for doing more absolute matches.
Yeah, Jonathan entered the IBJJF. He wasn't in the absolute GP. He was in a super fight, but it was for sure an absolute match. Jonathan, a lightweight, took on Roosevelt Souza, an ultra heavyweight. Yeah, probably about 100-pound difference in between those two. I know Roosevelt walks around 260, and the cap for lightweight is 168. So let's say 80, 90, 100 pounds in between those
Which
two.
At that point, it's like, all right, call it out.
And Jonathan did not get dismantled. He lost by, I think, a pass, right? Which Jonathan said he wants to do more in the absolute divisions. We've seen him in absolutes at IBJJF Opens, where, let's say, the level is a little less guaranteed to be high, right? There are a couple high-level athletes in there, but not the tip of the spear always. But I would love to see Jonathan enter into the absolute division at Pans. He is already registered for the lightweight division at Pans. He's chasing now his 4th Pans title. He's gotten the last 3 consecutively. It would be cool to watch him also go for the 5th that same weekend.
Love it, man. Love it. Yeah, so we've covered the major super fight, the big main event. We've covered the men's GP. What's next?
The
women's GP?
Women's GP at the Tezos FloGrappling IBJJF Grand Prix was phenomenal, and I was especially impressed by the performance of the returning 5-time world champion Nachiele De Jesus.
So impressive.
Nachiele had been out of IBJJF competition since 2019. She took double gold that year, making her a 5-time world champion, but soon after she became pregnant, right? There was COVID, and then she became pregnant, and then she spent some time adjusting to her new life. So she hasn't competed on the IBJJF stage except for in like a couple of minor tournaments since 2019. And in her return, she looked phenomenal, not just in her guard play, but also in top of the passing game, and not against, a couple of scrubs, against 3-time world champion Andressa Sintra in the first match, and against co-5-time world, against another 5-time world champion, Ana Carolina Vieira, in her second match. What did you think of Nachiele's performance?
Man, I thought it was great. I'm glad that she's back on the mat. I think all of it is made just that much more impressive when you kind of take into account that she was taking what is as close to a maternity leave as you can get. I mean, in her post-fight interview, she had said that, in this when she saw this event kind of pop up on her radar, she knew this was her opportunity to get back under the lights, on the mats, and we're so happy to have her. Now she has $10K in her pocket after some huge wins because, Corey read off the credentials of just Ana Carolina Vieira just right there, and that is a impressive victory no matter what point in your career you are. If you're coming back after a hiatus, after a break of that long, though, that is just exponentially more impressive.
So, and I want to throw out something that stood out to me, particularly in this match, but really in both matches. We talked, Connor, just a moment ago about what athletes who are very familiar with each other can look like, right? These two athletes have fought against each other several times. And instead of going back to the well and doing what they always do, right? Nachiele with her world-famous spider lasso guard and Ana Carolina Vieira with her exceptional knee cut and toreando passing. They could have just stood there and tried to play the game they always play against each other, knowing full well, like, you could see by Ana Carolina's grips that, okay, I know if I do this, Nachiele can't play her spider lasso. And meanwhile, Nachiele with her legs put her leg up here in the armpit and said, I know if my leg is here, she can't knee cut. And we could have had 10 minutes of stalemate.
They're just shutting down each other's games.
But instead, there was around halfway through the match, they both stood up and kind of, without speaking, agreed. Anna pulled guard. They said, let's see what we do with the roles reversed. So instead of this, nonsense game, because we know each other so well, I know how to stop you, you know how to stop me. Let's leave it to the refs. They switched positions. We got to see some great guard passing by Nachiele and some really interesting guard play by Ana Carolina.
Man, I love to see that. What was your favorite match to watch from Nachiele? Did you like? Was the final kind of your peak of her performance for the night?
Yeah, she looked really good in both matches. The final was great. The Andressa match had me on the edge of my seat the whole time because it was the very first match of the night. It kicked the show off, and both athletes really had something cool to offer. Andressa hit the same sweep twice. Nachiele hit the same sweep twice, and in between they were really fighting tooth and nail for every grip. So it was a really cool match to watch. Nachiele's not done. She said that she's going to be a little bit more active in the 2023 season, which makes that super heavyweight division even more exciting. We talked about the return of Tayani Porfirio. So that absolute title, I hope, in 2023 is going to be really competitive. We always see, the names like the Amy Campos and the Ana Carolina slide in, but you need a couple of really dominant super heavyweights to make that title what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't just ending there for the women's night of jiu-jitsu, the Grand Prix. While as exciting as it was, that was not the match of the night. Instead, the match of the night went to Janaina Lepre. She had a super fight with Tata Ribeiro, our very own. Tata's been on Who's Number One. She's been on the GP. She's been all over. But such a fun match. Corey, you want to break this down for us?
I was not shocked at all that this was the match of the night. Let's just say that. Janina and Tata know each other very well. This was their 5th match in the last couple of years. And it always looks just like this, right? Not always Janina coming out on top right to start, but both women coming out just with a fire. It seems like they're very good friends, but not the moment the ref says go. Janina coming out with just heavy passing pressure. This was literally in the first 10 seconds of the match. Janina eventually got herself past the guard and didn't take very long to get an armbar going. But Natalie said, not so fast. Right? She got herself out of the armbar. We'll have a look at the slick back take she hits here in just a minute. I'm so impressed by, this is the reason this match was booked, is what these two look like. And real credit to Janina. She has to be really confident competing in this room. The last time she did, she won the IBJJF FloGrappling Grand Prix, the lightweight Grand Prix. And I think that was a breakout moment. But this for her was kind of a reinforcement of that breakout moment.
Absolutely. It's really fun to see her making her name. Obviously, most of the women in this division and most of the athletes in this card have made their name from the IBJJF, going to the Opens, going to the majors, and winning their titles. But, Janaina having had her first breakout moment, at least for a lot of fans, on the previous GP, following it up with another victory, this feels like it is her competition stage.
And this is exactly why I'm so impressed every time I watch Janina. This is the last 5 seconds of the match.
Going.
She's up by 1 point. She's going for the armbar. Right? At that moment, there's no reason that most athletes wouldn't want to just take their foot off the gas, close the guard, lock it up. I know I can survive for 5 seconds.
Yeah, because if something happens, you could lose the match.
She takes the risk anyway. That's why she's so impressive. That's why she's one of the athletes that we love to watch most. And she's really just elevating her level, elevating her status, and I think she's finally starting to get the recognition she deserves.
Absolutely. And sorry, Janina, I swear to God, I pronounced your name correctly like 5 times before the show, and as soon as I looked into the cameras, I froze. So apologies for that one. But congrats to all the athletes. I'm glad that we're able to have more of the IBJJF rules style nights like we did. So really fun to see, and hope everyone was able to take that 10K pocket and go have some fun with it.
Of course, the Grand Prix wasn't the only event this weekend. On Saturday, Toro Cup, stacked day. It was a full day of events, but the headline event, Gianni Grippo versus Gabriel Souza. Gabriel Souza, the lightweight champion, returned to defend his title for the 3rd time, and he was successful with, you'll never guess, dynamic side-to-side guard passing.
Yeah, who would have thunk it? Gabriel Souza, always exciting to have on the mat. But let's not sleep on Gianni Grippo. He has been a long-time competitor, always a veteran, always game. But sometimes the pressure that guys like Gabriel Souza can put on you, even with just that outside passing, is just too much for people to keep up with.
Yeah, and Gabriel's pressure is... It's actually a different kind of pressure, right? Because I'm sure he's heavy when he gets into a dominant position, but his pressure is more of an overwhelming style, right? Just trying to make you disoriented, confused by just all these lateral movements, and even just in his energy, right? He's here to show you I'm game, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. This is a 20-minute long match, and Gabriel just consistently pushing the pace. Gianni has one of the most difficult. I was talking to somebody earlier today that said, I don't think I've seen Gianni get his guard pass since 2017, which is probably true.
Yeah.
It's so rare to watch Gianni Grippo get his guard passed, especially in a division where he's not at a weight disadvantage, right? Because he will once in a while jump into the absolute, and it's a little bit less common there. But Gabriel Souza has some of the best passing in the business, and it put him ahead in sudden victory here. So a little bit of a strange rule format. It was 5 minutes. 5 minutes, no score. 5 minutes with score on the board. He passed Gianni in the no score period, and then a little bit more of a stalemate in the second period. But in the sudden victory period, Gabriel Souza breaks it out, hits this pass again, gets right into side control, and solidifies his title defense.
So just to clarify here, I'm assuming the no takedown points in OT, or is it just because it was a pull?
That was considered a guard pull.
Okay.
Yeah, and you could tell he looked up at the referee and said, "Is that it, or are we still going?"
Yep. Well, one thing I love to watch about Gabriel is, when you're watching him pass, obviously dynamic passer, side to side we talked about. But look how he drops. It was most clear, like in one of the first clips that you showed, how he drops his weight as soon as he's past the leg, as soon as he clears the knee line. It is every bit of weight that he can put down on you, chest-to-chest pressure. And, man, does that not just look like the most miserable place to be caught under, especially knowing you're in OT and you just have to do something to get up out of there. My God.
And, Gabriel Souza is chronically kind of unsung. Let's not forget, ADCC silver medalist.
Yeah.
Multiple-time Nogi Worlds finalist. I mean, he's one of the best in the business, and it seems like he kind of always flies under the radar. He deserves every bit of recognition that he got here from Toro Cup, and I hope so much more. He is one of the best guard passers, especially in the lightweight division right now. Impressive to watch always.
And the only reason, really, he's even gotten any bit of overshadowed that he may have is because he's just in a division of absolute killers. In the last 2 years, think about the guys that he's constantly going up against. Pato, you know what I mean? Josh Cisneros, like these kinds of guys they're also on the come up. So no matter how good your accolades is, no matter how good your jiu-jitsu is, you're surrounded by people that are just killers. They all got that dog in them. They all got a path to victory no matter who they're facing. So really fun to see Gabriel Souza staying on top of the competition scene even after such a fantastic ADCC performance.
Congratulations to Gabriel, and Toro Cup is a great show. Go back, watch that match, watch all the matches. Toro Cup always puts on phenomenal show. Speaking of phenomenal shows, Flow Studios has a loaded month of March. I want to kick this off by talking about the kind of Flow Films project, right? There's more than 20 films and original series on FloGrappling. As of last week, they are all available for free, no subscription required. Go to FloGrappling, click on any film you want. It's yours to watch. There's a backlog going back to 2015, 24, I don't know, going back a ways. So make sure you catch up on, there's so much time worth of footage. And we will be adding one more on Wednesday, The Ups and Downs of the Manaus Boys. Premieres on Wednesday, March 8th. It is a 60-minute documentary following Diogo Reis, Mika Galvão, Fabricio Andre, Melky Galvão through the ADCC trials process in Brazil, through, of course, as we're seeing here, the biggest grappling event in history, the 2022 ADCC World Championships. As the name implies, some highs, some lows, but an incredible story of an incredible team and some access and behind-the-scenes stuff that I don't think most people have ever seen or have ever really understood about who Mika is, who Melky is, who Diogo, who Fabricio are. Right? There's so much that we know and we love about them, but there's so much that I don't think most people have really gotten to see from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always talk about the roster of athletes that are constantly expanding. So this is another cool opportunity. Not only do you get to see these three athletes, some of the fan favorites, kind of exactly, in their hometown, in their home territory, and on the competition mats, but, right there, you just saw Cade Rutolo pass by, say what's up. You're going to see all kinds of your favorite athletes, right? So if you're not Justin and the Manaus brothers, that's perfectly fine. You got everyone here. On top of that, like you said, we have some really cool archived films, maybe from way back when. I can think of a few, like just the John Combs films, right? Like there's some like sleepers in there that if you have not, if you're looking for more jiu-jitsu content to go through, we got what you need, whether it's new, whether it's old. So I'm super excited that we're constantly creating new content, but now we got it out in front of the paywall. No longer just for the Flow subscribers, it's for all of you guys.
Let me throw this up to you.
Yeah.
What's your favorite film on FloGrappling?
Oh man. Okay. I'm gonna go back through and do I need to see them all, right. But I will call out. It's hard not to just go Gordon. the Gordon Ryan film from 2019 ADCC. It's got as high a production level as I think that we had ever put forth into a film at that point, at least. So that's really up there. The Nicky Ron film's up there. Give me a second.
I'm gonna cheat and give you three while you
Give
pick one.
it to me.
The Buchecha film, right? The Buchecha documentary, two-part documentary that goes through essentially Buchecha's entire rise to fame and his reign at the top. Quest for the Triple Crown, two-part series on Leandro Lo in the season that he tried to win and successfully won Copa Podio in 3 different divisions. And the New Guard with Levi Jones-Leary, because just a great story. Right?
Yeah.
It's this brown belt world champion comes to black belt, dominates everything, has a kind of heartbreak at Worlds, but wins it all back at Spider. That's one of my favorite documentaries of all time, not just on Flow.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking through here, some of the ones that stand out to me. I forgot that we had the Rafael Lovato Jr. Film. That one's a fun one. Man, there's just too many to choose from. If you haven't gone through our archives, it seems like Corey and I have some homework to do because we're going to have to go back through and do some marathons. But we also got Eddie Bravo in there, Building an Empire, a 3-part series. You can go behind the scenes with the 10th Planet Madman that is Eddie Bravo. We got so much going on.
Before we get too far along, because I want to keep talking about films.
Let's do it.
Before the Manaus Boys film drops on Wednesday, Trey recently released a vlog. Diogo and Mika came into town, came into Austin, hung out with us at HQ. They went shooting at Sheepdog Response up with Tim Kennedy's crew up there. We have a snippet from that, but let's roll the tape. That whole thing is available on FloGrappling now.
What up, Demo? What's up, guys? What's up?
How you doing? Welcome to town. What's up, Mika? How you doing? Good to see you, man.
What's up, Connor? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
That's Baby Shark's payment there.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Here you go, Baby Shark. We got some money for you.
Baby Shark, now he's Megalodon. He's a big playboy, so we got to give him big money to come.
Thank you,
Hey, thanks
you.
for coming and filming with us. Superstar right there.
So now I want to bet with someone who want to fight against me. My money against your money.
You want a bet match?
Yes.
Who do you want to bet match against?
Anyone.
Imagine that I'm talking to you.
I'm the boss here.
So you're running things now around here?
Yeah, they will run the things now here. Everything will change.
What do you think about your nice office with this beautiful view?
Cool. It should be improved, but now it's okay.
Does this mean you're my boss now also? Diogo?
Yeah, I'm your boss, but also my friend.
Okay. That's good. That's
I'm
good.
gonna upgrade you.
Hey, let's go. All right, guys. So I just got a raise and a promotion. Thanks to my new boss, Baby Shark.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Yako Khalili, Director of Training for Sheepdog Response. We're out here at Reveille Peak Ranch with these champs out here. We're gonna get some shotgun training in today. These guys got lucky because this is the first time we've done a shotgun course, so the timing for them coming out for this is perfect.
What do you think about these guys? Do you think they're going to be as good at shooting as they are at jiu-jitsu?
Probably not. You know, it's an acquired skill, just like jiu-jitsu. Luckily, shooting doesn't take as long to get good at as jiu-jitsu does, so I think we're gonna be okay. As you can see, the guys already got the hat on, so we're halfway there. You gotta look the part first, right? So we're halfway there. Shoot, boom, hold it back, it's gonna pop out, automatically loads the next one.
So yeah, today we're gonna have a battle royal. Only one's gonna survive, and we're gonna see who it is: Baby
Who's
Shark
number
or
one?
Mika.
Oh man, Diogo, you look awesome. How do you think it's gonna go, Diogo?
Will be the things will go well.
Okay.
Okay.
Man.
Mika and Diogo should be a buddy cop film.
Yeah, that line, we're going to do a battle royale, caught me off guard. I can't imagine the sheepdog's eyes just getting real big. That's so fun. Man, where did he get that hat from? Was that like you just go to
So
Buc-ee's?
you can find out. You
Yeah,
can find
there you
out
go.
during the very beginning of the vlog. But go check that out. It's a lot of fun. It's a real behind the scenes look at Baby Shark and Mika are such characters, and I think watching two guys like that kill it on the mat, you forget just how cool they are as people. But definitely worth a watch, and go check out the film, which drops once again on Wednesday.
It was really cool of Diogo to promote Trey like that, give him that raise that he's always been asking for.
He's since been fired.
Oh, well, Mika took over. Mika took the position. It's like, Trey's got to go. Sorry.
That's not the only thing coming out of Flow Sports Studios in March. Also in March, on March 29th, Daisy Fresh Season 3, the final season, set to premiere. In preparation for that, like we said, all the films have been unlocked. That includes Daisy Fresh Season 1, Daisy Fresh Season 2. That's 10 episodes of Daisy Fresh. So if you have been living under a rock, if you don't know what we're talking about with Daisy Fresh, go check out the story of Pedigo Submission Fighting, which began in 2019. Well, our story with them began in 2019 and follow all the way through up until the end of Season 2. Get ready for Season 3, which once again drops on the 29th. Moving on. One more thing to watch this week. Well, there's tons to watch on Grappling, but one more thing that, for my sake, so that my suffering didn't come in vain, please watch this week the Fix My Game. I got the pleasure, let's call it, to do a Fix My Game with Roger Gracie. That was,
They were calling you out in the comments. They were saying he took it hard on you because you called him Roger rather than Hodger. Do you feel like that had an effect?
In my defense, I spoke with Mr. Gracie's father 20 minutes before shooting this episode, and his first question to me was, have you rolled with Roger yet?
Okay. So you got it from his dad. And
the guy who gave him the name called him, I'm sure he goes by Hodger. Everybody in the gym. I don't want to linger too long on this. I can only see this getting worse for me. However, it was as much pleasure as it was pain. It was very difficult to edit this and not just feel terrible about my jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But the upside, so many of the lessons that I learned from Roger Gracie have had immediate effect on my jiu-jitsu.
Awesome.
My cross collar choke is significantly better than it was just 4 weeks ago, as was my guard in general, my passing. I feel like there are so many cool lessons in what he taught me, and not just in what he actually sat there and explained to me, but watching back and watching the jiu-jitsu that he did and like trying to pick apart and study how he beat me up. Please take a look at it. For me, it definitely helped fix my game, which is the name of the series. It's the point of the series. So I hope you get something out of it.
Your suffering will not go in vain. We will all watch it. I guarantee it. But man, it's super cool that you got to do that. That may be the coolest Fix My Game guest we've possibly ever had.
There have been some cool ones, but that is up there for sure.
Man, top 3. We'll give you top 3 position, Corey.
Let's move on to the last topic here. Upcoming events. There is so much more to come on FloGrappling in the months of March and April, starting with Sogi Winter Wars.
Hold up, time out. Go ahead. I love the deep breath before, because you know what's about to go down. I'm going to sit over here quietly and just impress. Go ahead, Corey. Go ahead.
Sogi Winter Wars, March 11th, features Pachigoli versus Alex Nemeth. Also, an 8-man middleweight bracket, and my favorite match, Keith Krikorian versus Andrew Solano in the 170-pound weight division. Following that, combat sports coverage, Subversion Equinox, which is out in Australia. That features Ash Williams, Jeremy Skinner. Pans in Kissimmee, Florida, March 21st through 26th. Registration is almost full as of this morning. It was nearly 90% full. And the divisions are stacked. Lightweight, light featherweight, medium heavyweight, featherweight, roosterweight, and they all look impressive to me. Fionn Davis just threw her name in the hat, so she's going to be making her way over here. Later on this month, beginning of next month, Rise Invitational 11 on April 1st. That features a women's 135-pound bracket. Midwest Finishers features a men's 155-pound bracket and a women's 125-pound bracket. That's also on April 1st. Finishers Survivor Series 3. That's one of the team tournaments on April 16th. That one, a weight limit of 170 quintet style. And Emerald City Invitational on April 29th. That is an EBI rules tournament with a 32-man 135-pound division and a 16-woman 135-pound division. So they are set to name their bantamweight champions.
Love it. With 2K on the line for each of those tournaments. So super fun. Man, also, great job, Corey. Did it again. That's our guy right there.
Anything else today?
I don't think so. We talked MMA. We talked the GP. We talked upcoming events. Man, we're getting the year kicked off right. This is what? We're 2 months in, 3 months in now. We're on month 3. Love to see it.
Yeah, so much more to come this year. We still got Worlds on the radar. Pans, obviously. Things are just kind of getting started. Stick around. We have more news from Pans, hopefully, coming next week. Don't go anywhere when the Grappling Bulletin podcast returns on Monday.
Hell yeah.